Hello, everybody. This is Radio Entrepreneurs, and my name again is Jeffrey Davis. I get to host the show, at least for now. Marc hasn't taken me out yet, and I keep looking forward to him doing that to me. I like that succession plan. But without joking, all joking aside, this is a very important segment, and my co-host for this segment is the fabulous Marc Z from Marc Z Legal Staffing. And our guest, welcome, Marc. And our guest today, from Orlando, if I'm allowed to say, is the one and the only Lisa Cukier, partner at Rubin and Rudman. And I think we're going to be talking about trusts, correct, today?
Yes, we will be.
Great.
Yeah,
So, why don't you fill us in why this is such an important topic, which I had already explained to you I'm in the midst of dealing with right now, both personally and professionally.
sure. So, it happens to just about everybody. We age, and sometimes as we age, we need to make adjustments in the way that we work and in many other ways, the way that we live. But specifically when, there's a business owner who's experiencing either health issues or there's a cognitive issue, a decline, some memory loss, sometimes it can jeopardize family assets, family relations, business relations, and it can be very detrimental and tricky. So there are times when, in the course of business succession planning, or if the planning has not been done, or even if it's been done, and for some reason it's not the most opportune succession plan or time, sometimes business owners will need to have somebody step in and help them to manage the business in the capacity of a fiduciary, somebody standing in their shoes to manage relationships with others, such as vendors, and to handle perhaps HR issues and run the business. Sometimes it means somebody who understands how to run a business, somebody who's an interim CEO, or somebody who serves as trustee and helps with decision making, or conservator. And that's part of the work that I do. I should mention that I'm here in Orlando, not for vacation, nor do I live here. I'm here for a conference. It's the Heckerling Conference, and it's on trusts and estates. And so these issues do come up uh, in trusts and estates all the time. And serving as trustee is one way that we can manage assets and decision making for an individual who needs some support and help.
I want to add one point because I had mentioned in a previous segment to Marc Z, the devil's in the details. And having worked with a lot of businesses with succession planning, it seems like sometimes the matriarch or patriarch who's running the organization is the last to acknowledge the need to make a transition. And it creates a lot of problems. To make a long story short, my assumption is the earlier in the process of a person's business life, organizational life, that they deal with this and put these things in place, to me, the better it would be. Because if you wait too long, if you wait till a baby boomer, let's say, is in their late 60s, you're dealing with someone who's holding on too tight to the past and to the realm of control.
That's exactly right. That's what happens. I tend to be brought in at that point. My role tends to be crisis manager and crisis interventionist, and I settle down problems and quiet the problems and create a smooth glide path for an easier situation. That's when I'm brought in. I typically am not brought in years and years in advance. Very often, individuals will select a family member, next generation, years and years in advance. But when the time comes and there's a need, sometimes it's inappropriate to have the next generation step in, or sometimes the patriarch or matriarch of a business doesn't want the next generation to step in. And so having a neutral is often the way to resolve the problem in a good way for everybody, for the whole family and for the business.
Right. I mean, Lisa, in terms of when you talk about somebody who obviously is part of the family, it's a good thought in the beginning, but often there could be a conflict. And especially the matriarch or the patriarch will see that there's some problem against their interest, or they could get concerned or get paranoid. And that's when you're right, having a neutral person that maybe people can agree on would
Right.
be a much better idea, you know?
And sometimes the next generation, there's many children, adult children, and
Right,
sometimes it can create emotional issues and discord among the children of the matriarch or patriarch to have one or several of those children step in to role. I mean, we see what's happening with the Rupert Murdoch matter. We've got son Lachlan, there's 6 kids, or 7. And, he was looking to have one of his sons have the majority of control, voting interest, to the exclusion of others. And it created a lot of discord. And that happens in families all the time. It's nice when we're young and we're planning for succession and we say, well, of course, Junior's going to run the business when I can't. But then when it comes time, there's not just Junior, there's 4 other kids, or
right,
however many, one other child, or
right,
there's a spouse or a new spouse or
right. Or
several
a in-law
previous spouses.
spouse. Right,
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 right.
right,
Family members of all the
right,
siblings, and sometimes it's just inappropriate. Sometimes it's a wrong decision at the time. And then we've
right.
got to pivot and find the right decision. And that's when a neutral can be very helpful.
This whole thing is so complicated. And I think about the psychological status of all these different people who have been controlling, independent and hold on too tight. And I think about what's the best psychological state for someone letting go. And I'm going to get to my statement after that. And that would be maybe a sense of a person who's lived in a better state of humility through their whole life so that they're much more self-aware and do not feel the need to be in control. You might agree or disagree. But when you don't have that, are there legal steps that families or businesses can go through to help push this transition along?
Yes, there are. So, uh, if the matriarch or patriarch has insight and understanding about some of the diminishing areas of ability to manage the business, and you can have a conversation with the matriarch or patriarch, then the most dignified way to go is for that individual to nominate a neutral, somebody that they trust, an advisor, whether it's an existing advisor or somebody they have been referred to, it doesn't matter, but somebody who they can trust and put themselves behind, nominate that person as trustee. When it's too late to do that planning and that dignified self-selection, then I'm asked to step in as conservator. And in my role as conservator, which is a court appointment, if an individual no longer has the capacity, perhaps
Right,
they've got a significant medical condition and they're not able to make the decision about who should serve, then you'd file a conservatorship petition and the court would appoint somebody to step into the business and run it. But preferably, this is dealt with before you get to that crisis level crescendo, and you can have a dignified situation where you select your trustee. And very often I will meet with individuals, I'll be referred, I'll meet as if we're interviewing each other to see whether we could work together.
right,
I am a lawyer, I'm not a business person, so I might be in a position to say, I can't do this alone. I'll serve as trustee alone, but we need to get an interim CEO in here. Who do
right,
you recommend? Or I might say, who has been your property manager? Can I work with that person? I've got one client who is a landlord, and I'm handling decisions for the landlord and running the business, but I'm not going to go door to door and collect rents. And if the refrigerator breaks down, I simply want a text so I can say, here's your budget, go get a new one, and I do that with the property manager. Or if it's a business, I did once need to put in a CEO to sell the business. We had to restore relationships and we had to offload the business before anybody knew what was going on. And so we restored the relationships with a CEO, an interim CEO who knew all the players. And in doing that, we were able to revive some old relationships, sell the business and be done with it quickly. And that worked out well. In another matter, I am serving and have been for many years as trustee for an individual. And he and I sat and talked one Sunday and I explained what I do and who I am, and he explained what he has done with his enormous career, and he selected for me to serve as his trustee. We used to meet every single Sunday. We no longer do, but we used to meet every single Sunday at 5 p.m., have a bite to eat, and talk about his priorities and what he wants. And I would take his priorities and his requests and put them into place. We had a 5 p.m. dinner every Sunday for probably 2 or 3 years until just recently. We're going to dinner is just too difficult, so now I go see him at home. But yeah, and it works that way. I follow his guidance and he follows mine. And we've been running it all for years.
Very
Great.
interesting.
That's great.
Now, I guess the point for me, because I get involved in these situations more of as a friendly facilitator to the process with no real authority. You're a little bit different. If you're going to be a trustee, can you talk about, and this would be the last question, the insurance coverage that needs to be in place? Because I think
That's what I was in.
a lot of people don't understand how important insurance is if you're going to be working in this particular area.
Yeah, there is insurance for this. There's also you can get a surety bond. So when I'm a conservator, I do get a surety bond. As a trustee, I don't always get insurance. You can get insurance, and there are wonderful insurance brokers and agencies, and it can be done. There is potentially insurance for anything. But a bond is not a bad idea either. The other thing that can be done is I'll often read the trust that's being drafted, and I look for any exculpatory language, any indemnification language. I look for whether, what the consequence would be under certain circumstances, whether there needs to be a showing of bad faith before there's any liability. Because, of course, if you bring a trustee in, you don't want the trustee to decline the role simply because they're afraid of liability. The other thing I look for that's not related to insurance, but that gives me personal comfort is what is my accounting obligation and to whom am I accounting? I like to be very above board with the numbers, and I'd rather over disclose and have people agree that what I have just done is okay on a periodic basis, then wait a year, disclose it all, and have somebody say, "Hey, wait, I don't like what you did 12 months ago." So I find out who it is that I'm accounting to, and I figure out who they are and what their concerns are. And I'll very often create a list of what I expect to be spending money on and make sure people are okay with it. This happened just yesterday. I was called by a prospective client who said to me, "Well, can all of my legal fees come out of the trust?" And I said, "Great question." I said, "How's the other side? Like, there's other beneficiaries. How's everybody else getting this? Their lawyers paid. There's multiple lawyers involved in this deal." And nobody really knows. So I said, "Well, why don't I send a letter around to everybody suggesting that the trust cover all legal fees? Is there any objection?" Everybody's going to say thank you. Nobody's going to be upset with that. I
Right.
don't know who's out of pocket and who's dipping into the trust for this, but I will find out. And just being upfront is the way to do it. And then we can all agree. And nobody's going to come back and say, "Why did you reimburse this
Right.
beneficiary for legal fees? What about that benefit?" I don't want to get into that. I'd rather just say across the board, just submit your bills to me. And if they look reasonable, I'll get them all paid and reimbursed.
Uh,
Right. Lisa, you know what? It shows the whole theme that in terms of your role, whether it's trustee or conservator, is you're proactive and you're anticipating. And I think that's by doing that, it negates a lot of potential problems. And
right.
it sounds like that's what you're very good at doing.
We've been speaking with Lisa Cukier, partner at Rubin and Rudman, and Marc Z from Marc Z Legal Staffing. Lisa, sorry we have to come to the end of this segment. If someone wants to get hold of you and understand more about trusteeships, conservatorships, how do they find you?
I can always be found on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, so that's an easy way to find me. You'd barely have to spell my name. But if you do want to reach me by cell, you can. And that number is 617-966-9582. My email address is lcukier at RubinRudman.com.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks,
And
Lisa.
it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
Mark Z, if somebody wants to get hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, first of all, excuse me, just Google Mark Z, M-A-R-C and the letter Z. Go to marczlegal.com, MARCZLEGAL.com. Our wonderful Radio Entrepreneurs website, radioentrepreneurs.com, and 617-338-1300. And Lisa, it was a pleasure. Really enjoy all
Thank you.
the nuggets you share with our listeners. So thank you
Thank
for
you. It's
coming on
always
the
a
show.
pleasure to speak with both of you.
Every
Thank you.
time I've ever talked to Lisa over the last 20 years, it's been a special moment. Always great content, very important for businesses, especially at this particular, time in a business's life and an owner's life. So thank you, and remind everybody this is Radio Entrepreneurs.